Carl Jung was right. You never loved them. You loved the missing part of yourself. The mirror that bleeds. The person who broke your heart. They might be the one who showed you who you truly are. Think about it. The betrayal, the silence, the storm of emotions tearing through your chest. You called them cruel, a liar, a manipulator. Maybe they were. But here's something darker, something more terrifying than heartbreak itself. They weren't sent to destroy you. They were sent to reveal your own shadow. Because love is not just a fairy tale. It's a mirror, a brutal, blinding mirror. And the moment you looked into the eyes of the person you loved, what you really saw was the part of you that you've spent years running from. The part that felt unworthy, controlling, afraid of being abandoned. The part that gnashed its teeth in silence, waiting to be acknowledged. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." But sometimes fate wears the face of your ex. In this video, we're going to peel back the mask of every breakup, every grudge, every moment you screamed, "Why me?" and show you the answer you've been too afraid to face. This is not a guide to moving on. This is a journey into the dark cathedral of your own mind, where the stained glass windows depict every wound you ever denied. And the person who hurt you, they didn't break you. They opened the door. This is not just psychology. This is shadow work. This is Jung without the fluff, storytelling without the filter, and your pain transformed into power. And if you stay with me until the end, you will no longer see yourself as the victim of someone else's betrayal, but as the witness to your own awakening. Welcome to the place where your heartbreak speaks the truth you've long buried. Revelation. 1. Love is a mirror for old wounds. What if the love you lost wasn't about them at all, but about the parts of you they reflected? The people we fall for aren't random. They're mirrors, sometimes cracked, sometimes polished, but always honest. And when you stood before them, eyes open, heart wide, you weren't just seeing them, you were seeing yourself. Not the version you present to the world, but the version you abandoned long ago. The wounded child, the desperate soul, the aching echo that still hasn't been held. You didn't just love them. You loved what you saw of you in their gaze. You loved the hope that maybe, this time, someone would heal what's been left broken. You loved the possibility that if they stayed, maybe the hurting would finally stop. But here's the truth no one tells you. They were never meant to heal you. They were meant to reveal you. Imagine a woman who always felt invisible growing up. Her parents were busy, emotionally distant. As a child, she learned that being quiet kept the peace, and silence was mistaken for strength. Decades later, she falls for a partner who showers her with attention, until one day, he turns cold, withdrawn. She spirals, not because of him, but because the same childhood ache resurfaces. I'm not enough to be seen. She thinks he's the cause, but he's just the catalyst. In Jungian psychology, this is projection at its most devastating. We project the parts of ourselves we don't recognize, our wounds, our desires, our unmet needs, onto others. Love becomes a performance. Breakups become identity crises. But if we can step back, if we can stop blaming and start noticing, we see it clearly. They didn't hurt us. They held up the mirror, and we flinched. The real wound wasn't caused by their leaving. It was caused long before, when we learned to survive by hiding parts of ourselves. That's what love brings to the surface. The exiled emotions, the rejected identities, the hungry shadow. It's not romance, it's revelation. Have you ever thought about what you really miss when someone leaves? Is it truly them, or is it how you felt in their presence? Maybe you miss feeling special, or finally seen, or momentarily whole. What if, instead of mourning their absence, you use the pain as a compass, pointing you back to the places inside you that still need your love? But this is just the beginning. Because while the mirror shows the wound, it also shows the weapon. And in the next revelation, you'll see how jealousy, yes, that monster you hate, might be the loudest scream from the part of you still begging to be believed in. Revelation 2. Jealousy is the cry of the forgotten self. Jealousy. The word alone tastes bitter. It's the emotion we deny, the one we dress up in logic, in accusations, in icy silence or fiery rage. But what if I told you jealousy isn't the enemy? What if it's the last remaining voice of a self you abandoned? You know that feeling, when they smile at someone else a little too long, when they don't text back, when they mention their ex. Your stomach clenches, your throat dries, your mind races with imagined betrayals. You try to act normal, but inside, you're spiraling. You call it overthinking, but Jung would call it something else. The shadow's cry for integration. See, jealousy isn't about them. It's about what you believe you lack. It's the part of you that feels replaceable, invisible, forgotten. It's not just fear of loss. It's the fear that if you are left, there's nothing inside you worth returning to. And so, the shadow screams. Let me take you inside a moment. A young man in his late 20s dates someone bright, social, magnetic. At every party, people gravitate toward her. And though she's loyal, kind, and loving, he feels the panic rising. He finds himself checking her phone, questioning every guy who comments on her photos. He knows it's toxic. He hates that he's doing it, but he can't stop. Why? Because when he was a boy, his father walked out, left without a word, and no one ever explained why. Ever since, he's carried this belief. They always leave for someone better. The woman didn't create that belief. She just made it impossible to ignore. Jealousy is often misunderstood. It's not proof of love, it's proof of pain. It arises not because something is wrong in the moment, but because something was left unresolved long before. Your partner becomes the stage, but the play was written in your past. And here's the haunting truth. The more you suppress jealousy, the more it controls you. Because every time you ignore it, the shadow learns how to whisper louder, until one day it shouts and burns your relationship to the ground. But what if you did something different? What if, instead of letting it fester, you sat with it, held it, asked it, what are you afraid of? You might hear answers you never expected. I'm afraid I'm not enough. I'm scared I'll be forgotten. I just want to feel safe. Have you ever paused in the middle of your jealousy and asked, not what they're doing, but what you're truly feeling? What story from the past just got activated? Because when jealousy erupts, it's not just insecurity, it's identity crying for recognition. And until you see it for what it really is, you'll keep mistaking it for a signal to control others, when it's really an invitation to reconnect with yourself. And yet, as loud as jealousy may be, it still speaks in code. But betrayal, that speaks in fire. And in the next revelation, you'll discover how betrayal may not be the breaking of your heart, but the awakening of your truth. Revelation 3. Betrayal is a doorway, not a death sentence. Betrayal. There's a moment when it lands, sharp, unannounced, final, like the crash of glass you never saw falling. You stand there, heart in fragments, breath stolen, and the voice in your head repeats the one sentence it always does. How could they? But what if that betrayal wasn't the end of your story, but the moment it truly began? Let's pull back the veil. You weren't just betrayed by them, you were betrayed by a belief. The belief that if you loved hard enough, were good enough, gave enough, they'd never leave. That your worth was protected by their presence. And when they shattered that illusion, you didn't just lose them. You lost the story you'd clung to your entire life. Carl Jung wrote that trauma isn't just what happens to us. It's what happens inside us when we are no longer able to make sense of what we feel. Betrayal forces that confrontation. It removes the mask. It screams, "Wake up. Look at who you've become trying not to be left." Consider the woman who poured everything into a man, made herself small to fit his needs, abandoned her dreams to lift his, forgave again and again just to preserve the illusion of connection. When he cheated, she blamed him, rightfully so. But deeper down, she also had to reckon with something darker. She had betrayed herself first. Because betrayal doesn't begin with someone breaking their word. It begins when you stop honoring your own. The partner is just the final domino. But here's the paradox. Betrayal, in all its devastation, offers one of the most powerful initiations into self-reclamation. When the illusion collapses, you finally see what was real and what never was. You begin to understand that safety built on someone else's approval was never safety at all. That the loyalty you gave away so easily should have first been offered to the mirror. Think back. Have you ever been betrayed, and in the ruins, found a strength you didn't know you had? That quiet knowing, deep in your bones, whispering, "Never again." That whisper is your shadow speaking, not in malice, but in wisdom, because it's tired of being ignored. And sometimes, to wake you up, it has to burn down everything false. So, maybe they walked away. Maybe they lied. Maybe they tore your heart out and left. But in doing so, they forced you to meet the version of yourself you never knew existed. The version that rises. And yet, even betrayal has a messenger behind it. Because the darkness doesn't show up to destroy. It shows up to deliver a letter. And in the next revelation, you'll finally read it. Revelation 4. The shadow isn't your enemy, it's the messenger. The shadow. It's a term people throw around like it's some dark energy lurking in a corner. But let's make one thing clear. The shadow isn't out to ruin your life. It's out to save your soul. Not gently, not kindly, but truthfully. The shadow is every part of you you've rejected. The rage you were told wasn't nice. The sadness you buried to keep functioning. The desires you silenced because they didn't fit your identity. You didn't kill those parts. You just locked them in the basement. And guess what? They learned how to knock. Sometimes they knock through jealousy, through betrayal, through obsession, but most often they come through people. People who trigger you, people who seduce you, people who walk into your life like a storm and whisper, "Remember me?" Let me take you into a moment, a quiet one. A man sits alone after yet another failed relationship. He keeps choosing partners who need fixing. Every time he ends up drained, disappointed, and furious. Why do I attract broken people? He asks. But Jung would flip the question, why do you need to be the fixer? What shadow are you covering up by wearing a cape? The answer comes slowly. As a child, he was never allowed to cry, never comforted when scared, so he learned to cope by becoming the strong one, the rescuer, the emotionally reliable one. It became his identity, and now his shadow, the broken, vulnerable boy within, keeps showing up in the form of wounded partners, begging to be acknowledged, because that's how the shadow works. It doesn't scream, "I'm here." It hands you a mirror, shaped like a person, and waits. The shadow is not evil. It's simply the truth you weren't ready to love. It's the grief you postponed, the anger you denied, the fire you were told would make you unlovable. But here's the twist. The moment you finally turn toward it, not with fear, but with presence, you don't get consumed. You get reclaimed. Have you ever noticed how certain people evoke the same reaction in you over and over? That repeating trigger, that boiling resentment, that ache of inadequacy? That's not coincidence. That's the shadow showing up, saying, "Until you see me, I'll keep playing this role." So, what if, instead of running, you paused and asked, what part of me have I locked away? What part of me is starving for my attention? And who have I been blaming for what I'm too afraid to feel? Because once you stop making the shadow the villain, something remarkable happens. You realize it has been carrying the key to your wholeness all along. But recognizing the shadow is just step one. To truly grow, you must face the part of yourself that mourns the person who left. Not because they were special, but because they took something from you that was never theirs to begin with. And in the next revelation, we uncover what you really miss after the breakup. Spoiler, it's not them. Revelation 5. You don't miss them. You miss who you were with them. You think you miss them. Their voice. Their warmth. The way they looked at you like you were the center of their universe. But here's the truth that burns brighter than any illusion. You don't miss them. You miss who you became in their presence. You miss the version of yourself that felt visible, desirable, worthy. You miss the echo of a self that came alive when someone else saw you. Breakups don't just break our hearts. They shatter the mirror we were using to see ourselves. Let's rewind to that first chapter of the relationship. You laughed louder. You dressed with more intention. You texted with fire and softness. You felt like you were finally becoming the person you were always meant to be. But here's the twist. That version of you wasn't given by them. It was unlocked by you, through them. And the tragedy is, when they left, you slammed the door shut on that part of yourself too. Imagine a woman who fell in love with a man who made her feel adventurous, wild, magnetic. She started painting again, laughing in public, dancing barefoot in the kitchen. But when the relationship ended, she stopped. She told herself, that part of me was only for him. No, that part was always hers. He just held the match. She was the fire. This is the shadow's most cunning trick, making you believe that someone else owns the light they only helped you remember. When Jung spoke of the self, he meant the integrated, radiant version of you, not built by others, but uncovered by shedding illusion. And every relationship, especially the ones that break us, chisels at the stone, until what's left is not just survival, but sculpture. So, let's ask something dangerous. What if the thing you miss most isn't them, but the way they made you feel alive? What if the real loss was never external, but the quiet death of the part of you that trusted, laughed, hoped? And what if you could get that back? Not by chasing a new lover, but by falling in love with the you that existed in that golden light. Grief distorts memory. It turns people into myths. But healing requires precision. You don't resurrect a relationship, you resurrect your reflection, the one that shimmered when you let yourself be fully seen. So stop mourning their absence, start mourning your own. Because when you realize you were the one who brought the magic, you stop searching for it in others. And when that moment comes, the shadow smiles, because its job is almost done. But before you can fully reclaim yourself, you must face the most subtle trap of all, the one made of soft words, codependency, and emotional chains disguised as comfort. In the next revelation, you'll confront the invisible prison of emotional dependence and how it holds the shadow in place. Revelation 6. Emotional dependence, the soft chains that strangle the self. Not all prisons have bars. Some are made of whispers, soft looks, familiar habits. A good morning text, a shared Spotify playlist, a shoulder you thought would always be there. Emotional dependence doesn't slam the door shut. It seduces you to stay inside, and by the time you realize you've lost yourself, you've already handed over the key. We call it love, but love without sovereignty becomes survival. Emotional dependence isn't just needing someone. It's needing them to feel like you exist. It's outsourcing your sense of identity to someone else's validation. If they're happy with me, I'm enough. If they respond, I matter. If they leave, I fall apart. But here's the haunting truth. What we call romantic is often a reenactment of our earliest abandonment. Picture a boy raised by emotionally unavailable parents. He learns that love is inconsistent, sometimes present, often silent. Fast forward to adulthood. He dates someone distant, cold, but every crumb of affection feels like a feast. He becomes addicted to the unpredictability, to the chase, not because he likes it, but because it's familiar. The emotional dependency he now calls passion is actually a coping mechanism dressed as romance. Jung would call this a complex, a hidden emotional pattern fueled by unresolved wounds. And when unexamined, it binds the shadow tighter. It says, don't look inside, just hold on to them. They are your oxygen. But they're not. Dependency whispers lies. You need them to be whole. You won't survive the silence. You're too much, too broken, too empty alone. The shadow, trapped by these beliefs, begins to rot in the dark. It stops evolving. It becomes a ghost that haunts your self-worth. Not because you're weak, but because no one ever taught you how to breathe without someone else exhaling first. Have you ever stayed in a relationship long after it was over? Not because you were in love, but because the idea of being alone terrified you? That's not connection, that's captivity. But here's the shift. The very panic you feel when they're gone is proof you've disconnected from yourself. The dependency you thought was love was your own abandonment of your inner wholeness. So, what if, instead of asking, how do I get them back, you asked, why did I leave myself to keep them? What if healing isn't about detaching from them, but reattaching to you? Because when you rebuild your inner center, the chains dissolve, not all at once, but piece by piece. And you realize you were never asking them to love you. You were asking them to love the part of you that you had long stopped believing in, and that part is waiting. But sometimes, the chains don't bind from need. They bind from guilt. And in the next revelation, we'll confront the rescuer, the part of you that's always saving others, to avoid saving yourself. Revelation 7, the rescuer complex, saving others to escape yourself. There's a certain kind of person who's always there, always answering the late-night call, always staying when others leave, always fixing, healing, giving. You know the type? Maybe you are the type. You wear the title proudly, the rescuer, the dependable one, the strong one, the I got you person. But behind that heroic mask is a hidden truth. Sometimes we rescue others because we're terrified to rescue ourselves. The rescuer complex is one of the shadow's cleverest disguises. It looks noble, selfless, admirable. But dig deeper, and you'll find a wounded child who learned long ago that love must be earned, that to be needed is the closest thing to being wanted, that I'm okay only means something if everyone else is okay first. Let me show you. A woman finds herself repeatedly falling for broken partners, addicts, cheaters, narcissists. She pours herself into their healing, supports them financially, listens through the night, fixes their chaos. And every time, she ends up drained, unappreciated, alone. She tells herself, I just have a big heart. But the truth, her shadow has convinced her that her only value is being indispensable. Carl Jung spoke of the shadow not just as darkness, but as potential unlived. And the rescuer's shadow is this: a person who has never let themselves be the one who needs, who rests, who receives. Because somewhere deep inside, they believe that vulnerability equals weakness, that unless they are giving, they are invisible. But here's the twist: rescuers often feel deep resentment, not because others are ungrateful, but because secretly, they hope that by saving someone else, someone might finally come back to save them. That's the unspoken trade. I will fix you. You will love me. You will stay. But it never works that way, because love born from duty dies from exhaustion. So, let me ask you something piercing. Have you ever used someone else's brokenness as a distraction from your own? Have you ever clung to someone's chaos to avoid facing the emptiness inside you? This is not a call to become cold or selfish. It's an invitation to balance. To stop believing your worth is tied to how many pieces of others you can put back together. You are not a hospital. You are a human being. You deserve relationships where your healing is mutual, not sacrificial. Because when you stop playing the savior, something radical happens. You realize how long you've been bleeding behind the cape, and the moment you take it off, you don't fall apart. You begin. But that doesn't mean the pain goes away. In fact, your biggest triggers, the people who enrage you, shame you, unnerve you, are often holding the next mirror. In the next revelation, we'll explore why the person who angers you the most might be showing you the part of yourself you've refused to love. Revelation 8. The trigger is the teacher, anger as the mirror of the denied self. There's a person, you know the one. They walk into the room, and something in you tightens. Maybe it's their arrogance, their confidence, their freedom, their messiness. They make your blood boil. You don't just dislike them, they trigger you. But what if the reason they disturb you is because they're showing you the part of yourself you've been taught to hate? Anger, especially the kind that feels disproportionate, is rarely about the other person. It's about the part of you that they've just brought to the surface. The part you locked away, rejected, swore you'd never become. The shadow. Carl Jung called this the golden shadow. The qualities in others that evoke emotional intensity, not because they're wrong, but because they reflect an unlived part of you. Sometimes that's a negative projection. You see selfishness in them because you never learned to take what you need. Sometimes it's envy disguised as disgust. Sometimes it's fear. Let's look closer. Imagine a woman raised to be polite, soft-spoken, agreeable. She grew up being the peacemaker, the nice girl. Now, every time she meets someone direct, assertive, unapologetic, she bristles. They're so rude, she says. But deep inside, what she's really reacting to is the voice inside her that has never been allowed to speak up. Her anger isn't at them. It's at the part of her that's dying to exist. This is what makes triggers sacred. They're not roadblocks, they're arrows. They point directly to the internal conflict we've avoided, the parts of ourselves we've deemed unworthy, inappropriate, too much. And the people who irritate us, they're often wearing our masks, the ones we never dared to try on. Ask yourself this: who triggers you the most? Is it the person who speaks loudly when you were taught to stay quiet? Is it the one who chooses themselves when you were taught to self-sacrifice? Is it the one who walks away when you cling? Your answers aren't about them. They're about you. Anger is a compass. It doesn't always point to injustice. Sometimes it points to unintegrated identity. But be careful. If you don't pause and reflect, you'll keep projecting. You'll keep pushing away the very traits you secretly need. And in doing so, you'll stay trapped in a cage of your own making, where everyone else becomes the villain, except the one hiding in your shadow. So next time someone gets under your skin, ask not, what's wrong with them? But, what unloved part of me are they waking up? Because once you stop seeing your triggers as threats and start seeing them as teachers, you don't just gain insight, you gain power. And power, once reclaimed, leads to something even deeper: forgiveness. But not just of them, of the part of you that let the wound linger for far too long. In the next revelation, we'll step into that sacred space, the moment where letting go isn't about weakness, but liberation. Revelation 9. Forgiveness isn't for them, it's how you set yourself free. Forgiveness. The word itself can feel like a betrayal. Forgive them, you whisper, shaking your head. After what they did? And yet, the weight you carry isn't strapped to them. It's tied to you. Every grudge, every replayed memory, every imaginary conversation where you finally say what you wish you'd said. That burden isn't theirs, it's yours. And forgiveness? It isn't about them walking free. It's about you finally walking out of the emotional prison you've lived in for far too long. You see, forgiveness has been misunderstood. It's not about excusing behavior. It's not pretending the pain didn't happen. It's not reconciliation. It's release. It's whispering, I no longer give this story the power to define me. Carl Jung once said, what you resist not only persists, but will grow in size. Holding on to resentment is like feeding your shadow poison and calling it protection. But in truth, it's corrosion, quiet, daily, devouring your light from the inside out. Let me show you. A man cheated on by his partner spends years consumed by the betrayal. He follows her online, speaks bitterly of her to anyone who will listen. On the surface, he's moved on. New job, new life. But emotionally, he's still chained to the night she walked out. Not because she still matters, but because the pain gave him purpose. Without it, who would he be? But something changes the day he writes her a letter, one he never sends. He pours out every wound, every word left unsaid. And at the end, he doesn't beg for closure. He doesn't demand an apology. He simply says, I release you from my story. That's the moment everything shifts. Not because she changes, but because he does. Forgiveness isn't a gift to them. It's a funeral for the identity built around your wound. Ask yourself, what part of your life is still being narrated by a pain that no longer belongs in the present? Who have you made the villain in your origin story, just so you never have to look at how long you've been carrying the ending? Forgiveness reclaims time. It says, I choose to live from today, not yesterday. It gives the shadow a new role, not as jailer, but as guide. And no, you may never forget. You may never fully heal the scar, but you can stop reopening the wound. You can stop handing your joy over to someone no longer in your life. You can finally look in the mirror and see yourself, not as victim, not as survivor, but as sovereign. Because only when you free yourself from the ghost of betrayal can you take the final step, not just facing the shadow, but walking alongside it. And in the final revelation, you'll meet the version of yourself who doesn't fear the dark anymore, because they've become the light. Revelation 6:30. 10. Meeting the shadow. When you become who you were meant to be. There comes a moment, if you're brave enough, when the chase ends. Not because you've caught the love, or the closure, or the apology, but because you've finally caught up to yourself. The version of you that's been waiting in the dark. The version you exiled in order to be liked, accepted, safe. And when you lock eyes with that shadow, something strange happens. You don't run. You reach. This is the moment of individuation, what Carl Jung called the process of becoming whole. Not perfect, not pure, whole. It's when you stop trying to be the good one, the strong one, the lovable one, and instead, you become the real one. The shadow no longer threatens you because you understand its language. That angry voice in your head, you no longer silence it, you listen. That jealousy, you trace it to the part of you starving for love. That resentment, you follow it back to the boundaries you never set. You no longer say, why am I like this? You say, I see you, I hear you. You can come home now. Let's return to the metaphor, the hand of darkness pulling back the curtain. For so long, you thought it was trying to ruin you. But now you realize it was trying to reveal you. You weren't meant to hide behind the curtain of who people expected you to be. You were meant to step into the light, not by erasing your darkness, but by integrating it. The most powerful people you know aren't the ones without wounds. They're the ones who've befriended their pain, who sit with their shame like an old companion, who hold their triggers gently, who love not despite their past, but because of it. So ask yourself one final time, what would happen if you stopped trying to outrun your shadow and instead invited it to walk beside you? What might you create, feel, become, if you no longer feared being too much, too loud, too intense, too emotional? Because when you finally meet your shadow and no longer flinch, you meet your truest self. And that version of you, they don't beg to be loved. They radiate it. They don't perform to be chosen. They choose themselves. They don't fear the darkness. They carry it like a lantern. This isn't just the end of heartbreak. It's the beginning of self-possession. So if someone broke your heart, thank them silently. Not for the pain, but for the mirror. And when you look into it now, you'll finally recognize the one who's always been waiting on the other side. Final call to action. the light that walks with darkness. So, now you've seen it all. Not the relationship, but the reflection. Not just the heartbreak, but the homecoming. You've walked through 10 revelations, each one peeling back a layer of illusion to reveal a deeper truth. You learned that love isn't a destination, but a mirror, reflecting the wounds we've forgotten to tend. You discovered that jealousy isn't a flaw, but the cry of a self still waiting to be loved. You faced betrayal and realized it wasn't the breaking of you, but the awakening within you. You stopped fearing the shadow and started reading its messages. You remembered that what you miss isn't them. It's the version of you who once felt alive. You broke free from the soft, silent chains of emotional dependence. You laid down your savior complex and picked up your own healing. You turned your triggers into teachers, each one guiding you home. You forgave, not for their freedom, but for your own. And finally, you stood face to face with your shadow and didn't blink. This isn't just a script, it's your unbecoming and your rebirth. So, here's what I want you to do now. If one of these revelations cracked something open in you, write it in the comments. Don't just drop a quote, share your reflection. Because someone else right now is carrying the same weight, and your truth might just be their mirror. If you felt seen, heard, or healed in any way, subscribe. This isn't a one-time message, it's a movement. One where we speak the language of soul, shadow, and self. And remember this, you were never too broken. You were just fragmented. And now, you're becoming whole. Because in the end, the shadow doesn't haunt to harm. It whispers so you can finally come home.